Okay, it's another episode of Reflections, and for this one, my guest is Kellen, and he is a Day of Defeat pro, which, by the fact that a lot of people in the modern day of esports won't know that game, will tell you it's an old school player. And the whole thing is, this is where we're going to start, because I'm going to tell people at the top, I didn't follow Day of Defeat very competitively, you know. Obviously, back then, we didn't have actual streams anyway. We used to connect to all these games through the client if you wanted to watch or watch demos. So the main way I knew about Day of Defeat was I played it a little bit in the early days, and then I watched frag movies of it because actually I've enjoyed frag movies in most games. You know, it's like the best way to enjoy the best action. And then I know just from my work in esports that it had a few lands that were notable at the time, including CPL, obviously. So I want to start right at the top of kind of what I was saying there, which was one of the ways I know about Day of Defeat is I played it a bit myself. And the reason I played it myself, this is where I feel like people who are Counter-Strike players and Day of Defeat players have the same base, is that they were both just mods that people made fairly early on for Half-Life. And so the way that I played Half-Life, Counter-Strike initially was I had Half-Life and I went to LAN parties, you know, where we play Half-Life, Quake, whatever, and then people would just throw in Counter-Strike and be like, let's play this new mod that came out, you know. And so it was the same with Day of Defeat. I remember we were playing that game as well and trying it out, etc. Back in the early days, was Day of Defeat just the game that hooked you initially? Because I know you said you didn't like getting on the initial patches in terms of top competitive play, right? So were you there from the beginning of the game?
I really was. The beginning, it's arguable because the mod community, it was like the Wild West. I always tell people that back when we played it. There was no YouTube. That's like the best way to think about it. Like this was a while ago. There was really hard to even follow a pro scene or know what a pro scene was, but I got into, so it was called 1.3b when I started playing, which it was still in beta, and I think it was Counter-Strike was pretty early too, because I remember playing Counter-Strike and just being so young that like just the idea of dying and not being able to come back freaked me out, because I'm like, I want to play. And so a game where I could die and come back 7 seconds later kind of appealed to me more. I'm a huge World War II buff. I love history in general. So this was actually right when Saving Private Ryan came out, was right around that time. So I think you saw this big swell of interest in World War II, and it was next to Call of Duty and Call of Duty 2, and then you had Medal of Honor came out by Steven Spielberg, all kind of at the same time, and I think they all kind of piggybacked off each other. And then the whole, like, if you had Half-Life back then, you just downloaded mods. That's like what everyone did. You know what I mean? So it was literally like, I remember my close friend's older brother got me just downloading any mod that came out. You remember like Ricochet, and there were so many just bad ones, and you always wonder which ones were going to stick. And Day of Defeat, so I remember I played it when I was probably 12 or 13 is when I started playing it like a lot. And that's when it was still in beta, and then there was a whole slew of good teams. I remember the oldest one, which I'm sure no one even watching this will remember, was called SAC, Sorry Ass Clan, and they were like the coolest like team everyone wanted to be in, and they were just super good at the game. And then so it rolled from 1.3b. There was a new version called 3.1. I don't know where the jump was, or maybe I just remember it as 3.1, but that was the main one that got really popular. That was the one, it had a weird crosshair. That's kind of how everyone remembered it. And I remember their guns had a lot of recoil, which was like a big deal back then. Like it was not really an easy game. It kind of had a high barrier of entry because of that. And so that's when I really started following the pro scene. And even then it was only online. It was pretty small. And then that was Vigilante Elite and 101st were the two best teams back then. And you had clans like Nude, and then Island. There was a lot of, or U5, I think they eventually became Island. And then that's when I followed it a lot. And just as an interesting aside, one thing that's always fascinated me, and especially fascinated me then, is there's this weird bureaucratic red tape with esports that I think is kind of lost on the general public. I think you'll see it in League of Legends when people are just like, hey, this guy's challenger, why is he not on a team? And the answer is because no one will give him a shot, right? It's hard to get in because everyone's friends, and no one wants to gamble on like a new player that's up and coming because they can just pick up some other ex-pro from another team. So I struggled with that a lot through the end of 3.1, where I was clearly good. People knew who I was and that I was good, but no one really wanted to take a shot at me. A lot of people thought I cheated. I was really young. I was like 14 or 15. Most people were 19, 20. Sure. And then when retail came out, which is when you could actually buy it at the store, That's when the game got the most popular. That's when I finally got a shot on a really good team, Unsung Heroes, and then that rolled, and we went from Unsung Heroes. We won Cal Invite, and then we got picked up by Check Six, which was an old Counter-Strike team. Played with them for a long time. That was probably the best team we ever had. We got second place at the first CPL. Then we went again. We got first place that next year, and then we got picked up by Complexity. So it was pretty much a rogues gallery of the best teams at that point. So I went from what was probably the best team at the time, which kind of disbanded after CPL. I kept playing. A lot of my friends were a little older. They quit, and then I got picked up by Complexity. And we actually played with Warden a lot. I'm sure a lot of Counter-Strike players know Warden. He played a lot with us. He really liked DoD. So when we got picked up by Complexity, and I think he was even involved in Check 6, he played with us a whole lot. So I got to chat with like Fraud and all them when I played on Complexity. So that was really cool for me because I followed those guys playing Counter-Strike. But yeah, so I was at my peak when it was its most popular. So there was a long time where I wasn't, but it was kind of like the new mod at that point. No one was really that good at it.
Okay, so one thing I do remember, and this is unfortunately an infamous thing about Dave Defeat, was okay, so one thing people who were old school Counter-Strike players hated that they changed, and they never changed it back, was in 1.5 of Counter-Strike was when they brought in where when you jumped and landed, it slowed you down a little bit. And famously, even though it was different in Day of Defeat, I remember when they added in the stamina aspect where like you couldn't just run and jump all the time. You kind of like slowed down. When did they actually add that in? Was that before you became a pro?
That was so 1.3. It's literally 3 different games almost. 1.3b, there was no stamina. You could just run and jump infinitely. And then in 3.0, which was when the game started to get popular, they added in stamina. Honestly, the biggest controversial change in DoD was from 3.1 to retail when they took out jump shooting. That was a huge deal. They also made it where you couldn't shoot through walls quite the same, and people were really upset about that. But when jump shooting got pulled out of the game, that was like people were like, it's totally unplayable now. You know what I mean? It was like one of those moments where it's just there's no way this is going to work anymore. And I thought it was better. It kind of it took away that randomness. Like I'm a huge believer in competitive games. Take out any possible randomness in the game, like it'll always rise to the top. And I think that's one of the things that like DoD was good. In fact, it was great because the KAR, the bolt action rifle was a one-hit kill. And like that concept is gone from games now because people get too upset about it. But like that's why it was good. It was like the original StarCraft, man, balance by imbalance, right? Like it was too good, but like everyone got it. So like everyone had that guy on their team that was an ace with it, and like that, and once they made it where you could kill someone and pick up their gun, it got even better because then you could actually get one on your team, and then maybe you'd get in this really good spot, and then suddenly you're unkillable unless they want to, flank you or grenade you. Then there's all sorts of ways to deal with it. But then they released the new source, and they made it not a one-hit kill, and that literally destroyed the game. Because think about it, like if I'm better than you and you walk in a building and I shoot you and you don't die and I have to cock my gun now, it doesn't matter that I'm better than you because I shot you and you didn't die. So it's like once they took that out, once I could stop shooting you in the toe and just one hit killing you, and people in the public community hated it, but like it was so necessary to like asserting yourself in the pro scene. And once it was gone, I'm just a huge believer in like a good headshot system, rifles that are one hit kills. I think that is balanced by imbalance, and I love watching that. Like even the op not being a one hit kill kind of bothers me. I'm not the biggest I'm not the biggest Counter-Strike expert, but like I just hate that concept of like complaining about something because you're not the best at it. And there's just like when Kenny S got brought down a couple rungs when they changed the way the op worked. I just think it's silly. Like you adapt and you overcome. Everyone has access to it. Those players are the funnest to watch. Like let them do their thing. So that was just my opinion on it. But yeah, once Source came out and they got rid of that, it was literally just all downhill from there.
So as you mentioned, one of the interesting things about the game is, I mean, this makes logical sense since the whole point is, think about it, like Counter-Strike is like, let's say like it's set thematically in like the 80s or so, if you think of the weaponry, then this game was based in World War II. Now reasonably in World War II the weapon shouldn't be able to fire and be sprayed like a modern M4A1, like that does make logical sense. But that also means as a game, in some sense it's going to be a bit harder to to control the recoil of some of the weapons, right? So I've always thought, actually, this is a point that a guy in Counter-Strike actually once made, which is a great point. Like a tournament organizer, he said one of the reasons why Counter-Strike is sometimes a bit more difficult than actually something even simpler like Quake, where you can just see like the person's aiming exactly where the crosshair is that, a lot of the skill, essentially, if the person does a good job, unless you were watching his hand, you wouldn't actually know how he did it. You think the gun just doesn't have recoil in this game, So how difficult was the recoil to control in this game, contrasted against other games you've played?
Yeah, for sure. So I've always I will say this: I think Counter-Strike is the greatest FPS competitive game ever. Like, it's so just perfect and pure in my opinion. And I'm not talking. I really like a Go, but I 1.6, I didn't play 1.5 that much. It's just like the penalty. Like, I just love it. I just think it's just a beautiful game to watch. But as far as recoil, I always thought the recoil system in Counter-Strike wasn't that intuitive because the crosshair doesn't move with the spray, and that confused me when I was like when I'm 12, I just don't get it. You know what I mean? And like with DoD, I just understood. And so, to answer your question, it is very, very strange to get accustomed to, like to the point where it made it hard to play other games. Because if you're talking about the VAR, which was the gun in the game that had the most recoil, I mean, it was a steep learning curve, and it was to the point where, and this kind of gets to your point, is it was really fun. It was a good way to assert yourself, right? Because like there was people out there, like Shifty Powers comes to mind. He was probably the best heavy that played the game, and like he was a force because like he was good at all ranges. Like there wasn't that, like there were times when he would kill you and you're just like, that's just, no one should be able to do that with this gun. And like that, it was the bar really helped balance the BAR balance the KAR, right? And that it was the same kind of gun, but it was on the other team. And instead of being this one hit kill, it was high recoil, high damage, right? So again, like high risk, high reward. And once it was really like a muscle memory kind of thing. Like there was very little randomness in it. Like if you played a lot, you could really get a sense for it. It even was really hard to fire standing up, and you would see like the best heavies could just like gun you down from across the map while standing up. And so it was just cool to watch like each niche in that game, like each gun, it took a different play style, and there was always someone that was the best at that gun. So you were always having to play against the best sniper or the best heavy, or like you even had supporting roles, which I was never good at. That was the only gun I never played at the highest level is like the Thompson or the kind of submachine gun role, because it took a different mentality. You had to be willing to like camp and just be a team player, which I was so horrible at. And I think it was cool to watch each person kind of, it's like art, right? You get to express yourself like through this game. And I think you see it in Counter-Strike endlessly. Everyone has their own style. I'm sure you could watch a player without knowing who it is and be able to tell who it is, right? Just by how they play. And so you saw that a lot in the unique recoil system in the game. The Garand was the same way. Like I never really got good at controlling the recoil on the Garand because there was like a rhythm to it, and some people that were good at it, they would just get in the rhythm and they could just destroy you.
So, okay, as you kind of touched on there, and that's another thing about Day of Defeat that was very early on in esports, which is the concept of having a team game where there's like set roles. Like in games like Quake and Counter-Strike, the team versions obviously, there are roles. Like the best teams obviously understand how to divide up where to play on the map and who's playing what, but they weren't like as explicitly known to everyone who plays the game. Like if you play League of Legends, even if you're just someone in solo queue, you know the concept of the roles and basically what you're going to do. So in Day of Defeat, since this was one of the games where you had to kind of have the right composition of players, it wasn't just like stacking the best players together,
Yes.
If you were this young guy who it was hard to break into the scene, etc., does that mean the first teams where you had success, were they lesser teams? Were they like teams that weren't all the best players? Because it must be hard to get someone to give you kind of like the star role. I mean, I remember all the clips to see you with, mainly with the sniper rifle, right?
Yeah, so I sniped for a long time. That's how I broke in, was sniping, which it's so silly because I'm like I'm an adult now. Like I have a grown-up job, and like I thought I was super cool back then for being good at video games, and that time has come and gone. But just to be realistic about it, I played at the highest level with every gun. Like I was a sniper for X amount of years, I was a rifle for X amount of years, and I was a heavy for X amount of years, and like no one else really did that. Everyone else like had their gun and that's what they did. So yeah, I think I think it's obviously true. I think you see it in the NBA, right? Like the game has changed. It even changed after people still play DoD. There's a group of about 30 people that still 12 men every day. And like the degree to which they have gotten so good at the game is just disgusting because it always trends upward. And you brought up a really interesting point that I'm so fascinated by esports. So I love analogies. I know most people probably have never played DoD or even heard of it, but to make a good analogy is that I think there's this huge disconnect in the community, in the esports fandom, where people want to see super teams, right? Like they want to see all the best players get on the same team and just win. And what they don't realize, it's so fascinating because when you look at it on paper, it seems like a math problem, right? I put all these pieces together and it equals a higher number because everyone's better. And it does not work like that, right? Like you have to have team synergy. You have to. And like people don't get that. They just want to, I think you saw it with Immortals. They all hated each other. They just shoved them all together and they were really good, but they weren't friends. There was no, and the best example I'll give you is we actually had a better team the first year we went to the World Tournament and we lost. We got second place. That was probably the best team we ever had, skill-wise. But we had a guy on our team he was so negative, and like when he would die, there was no calling spots, there was no discussion of strategy. It was cussing, and it was, what are you doing? You know what I mean? And what's interesting was that next year we went back to the World Tournament, and I remember we should have lost. We had all intents and purposes, it's not intensive purposes. We should have lost, and there was a moment where my whole team was dead. It was just me left. I had one flag, the only flag, and I remember I could hear them all coming up the hill, and I had to defend this flag or we would lose $9,000. And I had the most vivid memory of our in-game leader was sitting next to me. He was probably my best friend on the team, and he was pulled back from his desk like this, and he was looking at me, and I vividly remember his face. He had this smirk on his face. He looked just like this. He was like this. And I could just tell that he knew I was going to do it. You know what I mean? Like my buddy sitting next to me, he was not worried at all that I wasn't going to kill everyone on their team and win the game. Like, cause he knew who I was. He believed in me. Like he wanted me with him. And it's like, if you took him from the team and replaced him with a superior mechanical player, I would not have played as well, because like, you have to believe in each other. There's this sense of camaraderie, and you can take it too far and have a team of friends, you know what I mean? And that's not what you're shooting for either, but you got to find that mix. You can't just import. No one speaks the same language, shove all the best players on this one team and just expect them to win everything. And as a fan, it's so hard to understand what it feels like to have someone sitting next to you that believes you're going to hit the shot. You know what I mean? And it's an abstract concept, right? I think watching it, you have no sense of it. You just want to see all your favorite players on the same team duking it out, and it doesn't work like that. There's this perfect balance between skill and friendship and camaraderie, and like we struck that when we won the World Tournament. And I think keep that in mind. Like if you're a viewer and you watch esports, there's so much more to it than just who's the best. It just jamming them all together 9 times out of 10 is not going to make the best team.
So this Czech 16 that you were on, that you referenced, was probably the best one you played on. Obviously, it was the one where you had your initial big successes. Yeah. Like, break down who the lineup was, because I remember just from frag movies, I remember watching like that Akpeth guy and a few other people, but it was only like the big names I really saw. So who was the team, and what was kind of the breakdown of what role they did and what they specialized at?
For sure, Akpeth was actually the guy that got cut. He was horrible. He was my best friend on the team. We were super close. Like, he was literally like, it seems cheesy, I was a socialite in high school. I wasn't like a shut-in kind of nerd, but like, he was my best friend because I spent all my time on Ventrilo and on all those programs just talking to him. He was my buddy. And so he was, in my opinion, at that time, so he's the one that kind of scouted me and picked me up and took me in and was like, hey, let's quit playing in these lower leagues and go play it with the big boys. And he was probably the best rifle in the game, in my opinion, at that point. He had a pretty conservative play style, which I think is fine if you have someone to offset that and play a little more aggressively. But no, he was, in my opinion, the best rifle. We had a guy named Spars who was a Canadian, and he was a team player. That was just what he did. He camped, he waited. He would be the guy that like you'd capture mid and then you'd push forward, and he would just chill there. He would literally just wait for like 10 minutes until everyone died and they pushed to take it, and he would shoot them all in the back. Like, that was his thing, and that was fine. We had a guy named Haps. He was a heavy. This was still more in the beginning. He was good, but he definitely wasn't great. We had Mantis, who was the team leader, and he was just a pure supporting role too. He was more so, he played like the Thompson, the submachine gun kind of roles. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4. We had me. Yeah, so there were 6 of us. Did I name 6? I'm trying to think if that's all of them.
And then more, isn't there?
Yeah, Cyan. So we had Cyan 007. So he was really popular. So when we all came together, it was like a kind of a big deal because people knew I was good. A lot of people thought I cheated, but people knew I was good. And Cyan and Akputh were like real good. They were our 2 rifles. Cyan had success in the game, the previous game that had just gone away, and then Retail came out. He was really good in that one. I was super stoked to play with him. Like I remember I got to play with people that I looked up to, and it was really cool to get onto this team. So we won a couple with them. We won Atlanta. So when I was 14 or 15, there was a big LAN up in Atlanta. That's when my parents realized what I was doing was unique, and this was kind of like, it was for a while it was like, why are you always on your computer, you know what I mean? And then I approached my dad and I was like, hey, if it's okay, I want to fly out with all my friends that I always play with to Atlanta, and there's this big tournament out there, and we're going to try to go win it. And he was like, well, how much is it? And I was just like, no, like, they're paying for it. My sponsor's paying for it. I'm going to fly out there. I'll have food. I'll have a hotel. I don't need anything. It's okay if I go. And that's when my dad and my mom got really interested in like what I was doing and thought it was really cool. So that was like the early team. In the middle, and this was probably the most popular Czech 6. This is the one we won the world tournament with. We had we cut him and we replaced him with a guy named Blair. Blair was really, really good. He was more conservative style. We had me. We had Max, who became probably my best friend on the team. Like, we're all still buddies. We all still chat pretty regularly. We had Dan, who was our sniper. He went by Scorch. We had who was our team player? So we had the twins, Brian and Brad. So they are, one was a team player and one was a rifle. And he was probably skill-wise, Brad. He went by Dorito, like the best player in the game. Like, a lot of people said I was the best player just because I won the most, which I was definitely the most clutch, but he was just like, he was like the consummate safe player, like that always just does the thing that is least likely to get him killed and get him the most kills. So he wasn't really a highlight player, but he was just more conservative. And then we had Spars, who was the Canadian. He was on the original UH, and he was a role player, submachine gun, and the team didn't live without them. Like, they didn't make the flashy plays or anything like that, but they were integral to what we did and all the winning that we did, because I couldn't do that. I was just systematically incapable of playing in any role other than like, I'm going to run straight at you and try to kill you.
So when you mentioned Dorito, like, he was a guy who was on the rival team beforehand, right? Wasn't he on the earlier call teams when you were battling them?
And I meant to add that as an amendment. So me and Blur were the rifles. He came in on the next team. So on the Cole team, they picked me up. X6 disbanded, and then Cole picked me up. They had gotten second place. They picked me up. We went and got first with me. That year, I did not play very well in the World Tournament. I'll just tell you, I struggled for a long time with like severe alcoholism. Like, I can just say that because I'm in recovery. I have 5 years sober. So that was like the beginning of a horrible period of my life. And I remember a week before the World Tournament, I hit my fence. I was real drunk and I hit my fence a bunch and I broke my hand, and I played the whole World Tournament with like a cast on my hand, and I played serviceably, you know what I mean? I didn't play that well, but that was cool. I got to meet Michael Dell, the guy that made Dell Computers, and he was like, did you just win a world championship with a broken hand? And I was like, yeah. So that was cool. But I wasn't what I was the year before that. Like, I played all right, but my hand just hurt so bad. I had to take it off to play, and then I would put it back on. And I actually ended up, I got a boxer's fracture right here. So it hurts to write, you know what I mean? So that was the beginning of a terrible time. But in that World Tournament, Dorito just carried us. Like, he was just I wasn't that interested in the game anymore. All my friends were really Czech 6, and once they left, I was just like, I don't really. I'll just keep playing because I'm good. And but the year we won before that, the year we got first place, that was the year we were just like, we've always said that was the best team that ever played. Man, we were just on the next level.
Okay. So obviously, as you've been kind of outlining, if you think a good team is not just the one with all the best players. So presumably, it wasn't just because you had the best performing players. This was the best team, right? What made this team so good?
We had that, man. We had that X factor. I'm trying to think of a good analogous team. Maybe is it Virtus Pro? What's the Counter-Strike team that's just been together forever? Like Taz. Yeah, I mean,
been together a long time, yeah.
Yeah, that's probably a good analogy. But we had just the perfect convergence, and you have to have an agreement on how everyone's going to play. And I think that's another team. The super team why the super team doesn't really generally work is because no one wants to be that guy that like doesn't get the glory. Like I got the check, right? Because I killed everything, and 5 people didn't get the check, right? So it's hard to just like swallow your pride and be like, I'm going to let this guy that's better than me go out and just kill everything, and I'm going to be like the team player. So that was one of the main reasons, is that everyone was really, really okay with their role. Like we had a sniper that didn't want to play too aggressive. Like when I sniped, I just wanted to run straight to their spawn and just like spawn camp. And Dan wasn't like that. He wanted to hold objectives, and like he wanted to make sure that I could go do my thing. And so it was just we had really good communication. That was, I think, in esports now, it's so serious. People are making so much money that like the communication is there. I don't think you have the person on vent like, oh, that's BS. You know what I mean? Like just complaining into the mic. But back then it was a real problem, because like we were just kind of playing for fun as much as we were for money. So it was an issue when someone was in a bad mood and they just wanted to complain on the mic. And that was the first team probably ever in the history of Dave Defeat that you were not on the mic if you had something negative to say. Like that was what we fostered, is like we're a team, and like when you die you call. That's all you do. That's your only goal. I don't care how mad you are. I don't care how bad you're feeding. Like you just tell me where they are so I can do my job since you're not doing yours. And I think that I think you see that a lot in like the mic replays of League of Legends, but that was like a new thing at the time. I'm sure Counter-Strike probably went through that too, where it stopped being this thing that people were doing for fun and started being like really serious, when it was like, no, we don't want you if you're going to do that. So that was probably, as we got there without like the push from a sponsor or this incentive to go win money. It was more just because we wanted to win, and like we liked each other a lot. So it's like I was going to do what I could to make sure that you got the return kill, instead of letting you know that like I hate that guy that just killed me. So it's just, once we got with that fact, and that kind of spread through the community after we were a team of, hey, let's be constructive in all of our conversation, instead of, and then we had an in-game leader, which wasn't really a thing back then. We had Max, and he was just like, no matter how much we were losing, he was just like, we're better than these guys. We got this. Play your roles. You know what I mean? Like there was a lot of that just belief that we could win. And I mean, that year we were in the World Championship, the second year, and we won. We should have lost. We were so far behind. And like to hear him with like literally minutes left, like 200 points down, like, oh, we got this, guys. Everyone play your roles. You do this, you do that. Like, we're better than these guys. Just, keep chugging. And like we did. We just kept taking a couple more inches, and we ended up winning that game. And I remember that's the moment it clicked for me, like how important that guy on the team is, that is like the voice of reason and is like, everyone calm down, we can win this. And I think teams lack that, you know what I mean? A team that doesn't have that it's like when everyone wants to surrender at 20 minutes in League of Legends. It's like, really? Have you never won a single comeback game ever? You know what I mean? Like, just play and let's see what happens. And I think that concept it was new back then. It's not so new anymore, but back then it was a new concept to have like an in-game leader.
So in the early days, I know another thing that was similar between Day of Defeat and Counter-Strike was that in the early days of Counter-Strike, even when it was a big esport, esports itself was small enough that, huge LANs would only be every 5-6 months. And so in between, even though Cal Invite and Counter-Strike didn't have prize money, you didn't go to a LAN final or anything, you still played it online. It was important, because it was the only thing you could do for a few months, as if you were an NA team, for example. So I know in Day of Defeat, because you had obviously an even smaller LAN circuit, Cal Invite mattered, right? Winning this tournament was a big deal, even if it was online and people could claim, oh, this guy cheated or whatever. It was a big deal, right?
It was such a big deal. It seems so silly in hindsight, right? Especially, I'm sure, to people watching, right? Like, it was just this online tournament. Now it's like too many LANs, right? There's just too many. No one can even go to them all. They're like all, they don't have homes anymore. They just live in hotels. It was not like that. And it was very like, it was like a community I think the biggest thing to explain to people is there was no YouTube. It took a lot of effort to follow the pro scene back then. Like, so you knew everyone that posted on forums. This was before Reddit, so there wasn't like a hub of all things gaming. It was just like we were on 1911 back in the day, and that was like the original trolls and like just weird 4chan personalities on there. Like I remember everyone from 1911, and then we moved over to Gotfrag and we kind of had to clean up our act a little bit. But yeah, it was the wild west of like pro gaming. We were kind of making it up as we went along, and it was, I remember the first time I won a Cal, I wanted to win a Cal Invite championship for years before I did, and I remember watching those guys and just watching their demos. I mean, spent so much time watching them play just to try to play like them and making my name, you know, analogous to their name, which is stupid, and you still see that stuff.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? The guy in solo queue with a TSM tag, you're like, really? And that all that same mentality existed back then, is that you watched your favorite players, and just I literally felt like, it seems so cheeseball, but like I got to live that dream that I had, you know what I mean? Like I wanted to go and sign autographs and have people think I was the best, and for the longest time I just watched other people do that, and like I would try to chat with them on MRC and they wouldn't return my chats, and I was like, oh. And then eventually it became, I was that guy to so many people, like when the game was popular, and suddenly, and I tried to be nice, you know what I mean, and like chat with people and play with people and like not be like stuck up, and that's when you get into that bureaucratic red tape of like the pro scene of it's so hard to break into. Like you can't, there's so much more than just it's who you know. I've learned that in my professional career, man. I have an unbelievable job, and I only got it because I just happened to know a guy that worked at the company and they took a shot on me. So I think you see that a lot in pro gaming. It's really disheartening, especially if you're young and you're trying to break in. Like, how do you do it? And it's just, it's click up, you know what I mean? And it was a lot like that back then. Is there was these groups of people I idolized, and then suddenly I was a part of that group, and it was the most cool. It was the coolest thing I've ever done. Like it really. I haven't gotten married yet. I haven't had a kid. So it's like my fiance is my world, but outside of that, like standing on that stage and winning those online tournaments and going to Cal-I over and over. I went to like 12 Cal Invite championships in a row, and I won every other one for like years. So it was so cool to just be able to like live my dream, especially when I got to stand on stage and like get my check and pictures and all that stuff. It was so cool, and it was even cooler because no one was doing it. That wasn't a thing. Like all my friends had summer jobs, and I just played video games all the time. Like I did lessons, and that was really new. People paying me $50 an hour to teach them how to play DoD. Like that was a thing, and my parents were just baffled by that. Like, what? How are you getting money? How does this work? Like no one, it wasn't like you could turn on TBS and watch it. You know what I mean? That was just not, you couldn't even turn on YouTube and watch it. So yeah, it was a lot different, but it was like a dream manifest to get to go and win all those tournaments and like be that guy. It's like my internet fame has followed me, right? Like you even reached out to me. I post on Reddit about it probably once every 2 months, you know what I mean? I feel like something will post that's pertinent to what I did, and I'll just share a little anecdote about my experience, and 100% of the time people are like, oh, I know you. I shared that story online that you probably read, where I literally I work, I cover 3 states for a big auto finance bank, and I literally called Oregon and I was like, hey, I'm your new sales rep, what's up? And he's like, Kellen? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, how old are you? And I was like, I was 28 at the time. I was like, I'm 28. And he was like, oh my God, you're my favorite DoD player. And I was just like, what? And so my trainer's right there next to me, just like, what is happening? And I'm like, it's a long story. You wouldn't understand. Sure. So yeah, it's been a really, really interesting experience to have like the most tiny bit of e-fame just follow me around my whole life.
So obviously, like, Counter-Strike was the mainstay game of CPL, you know, for many, many years. But the interesting thing is, CPL did try out a bunch of other games. Like, I remember, for example, they did a tournament on, you know, Team Fortress 2, and they tried to, obviously later on they had like Halo, and they had a bunch of games they like gave a little test to, and they did a couple of tournaments, as we're talking about, in Day of Defeat. So since that was quite a few years into the game, what was the significance when like there was actual like legit esports lands were running Day of Defeat? What was the significance for the community? Because that was like your prime, right?
Yeah, that was when I was winning, racking up Cal Invite championships, and it birthed a lot of new teams. A lot of people tried to put teams together to go, like new teams that they thought could win. But yeah, it was how you would imagine it. You know what I mean? It was like the cool. We had always organized our own little lands, and it's like you won, maybe $1,000, and you'd split it amongst your team, and it was just more for the experience. But the idea that there would be, it was rumored to be 10,000, but $9,000 on the line, and we would all get to fly in, and we had real sponsors that would pay for us to travel. I live in the area where the World Tournament was, like 10 minutes from it. So I was always kind of bummed that I didn't get to fly anywhere, because it was literally just like right down the street. It was like in my backyard. But it turned out to be really cool because all my family could go. I had a huge group of friends. We all would just pile in my car, and they would bring cars, and we would all go up there and watch me play. So that was really, really cool. Just for my dad got interviewed after I won one year, and he just thought that was the coolest thing. My dad's a character. And so yeah, it was the buzz online. It was almost like there's this is too cool. And I think it was really sad when that highest year, it was 9,000. That was like the year of Day of Defeat. And then it kind of, after that, it was like, is there going to be another one? And there was another one, but that second one, it was so obvious that it's like, this is it. You know what I mean? Like this game, and you see that in esports, it's this really short life cycle for games. Generally, I think companies have started to figure out how to elongate the lifestyle of the games, but yeah, or lifestyle, the lifespan of the game. So yeah, it was so cool to see it kind of materialize. And as it got closer, it was like, oh, are the plans going to stay? Is it going to get canceled? And it was BYOC, like you had to, lug your computer up there. And this is like old CTR monitors and stuff, or CRT, whatever it is. Yeah, you had to take your computer up there. It was a hassle, you know what I mean? But it was fun. It was literally so fun to get to meet the people that you spent so much time with chatting online, and go out to dinner, and just, you know what I mean? I would like take them to parties because I knew all these people that lived in the area, and I was like, let's go do stuff, you know what I mean? So it was really cool. I think it made it even more fun for my team, because I did live there and I could take him. It wasn't like we were just trapped in the hotel. We went and did all sorts of fun stuff. I actually went out to California a couple of years later just to see Max, and we just hung out and like went to a frat party and stuff. It was just a lot of fun. But yeah, he was like the leader of a fraternity at USC, right? Like the most opposite of a nerd you could ever imagine. He just happened to be really good at DoD. So it was so fun to watch it kind of materialize. It was very surreal, and all that aside, I think we were realistic about what it was. You know what I mean? Like, we knew that Counter-Strike was the game. We were so excited to watch Complex play because they won. They actually won the year that we went and won. So there was 15 of us, I think, that got to meet Michael Dell, the guy that invented Dell Computers, and like 13 of them were from Complexity. So that was cool to go up there and just kind of, I still have my Complexity jersey in my closet, but it was really cool to kind of see that manifest. And then very sad once you realize, like, okay, Counter-Strike's going to keep doing its thing. It's going to be mega popular, and they'll bring in a rotating cast of smaller games as they go. And a lot of people might not remember, but Painkiller was super popular when I went, and I remember those guys were winning big money because it was a 1v1 game.
Yes.
And I remember watching Vu and Fatality duke it out, and those games were so fun to watch. Like, if you ever want to go back and watch the old Painkiller games, it's probably a game you've never even thought about. It was in the Quake 3 vein, you know, and I'm sure you remember it, but I'm just saying the general viewer. Yeah, Painkiller was a lot of fun to watch them play that game, and that was cool too. It was just an experience to go watch all these pros play all these different games, and it wasn't so normalized as it is now. It was very underground, and I drive by the hotel we had it at all the time for work, and I'm just like, hey, that's where I won the world tournament. This is so cool. And then the year we had it at another hotel that was like one of the nicest hotels in the area. It was beautiful. It's like a 4 or 5 star hotel. It's awesome. So I go out there take my fiance out to dinner or whatever, and we'll just going down there is cool, and seeing the convention center where we had it at. It's cool to like live, you know, where it all happened.
So I know from knowing a lot of players in esports over the years, especially in games that, like, especially for example, like Quake got a lot smaller in the later years, you know, and it's only now maybe going to come back. And so I know though that if the people who were the best players, it actually didn't matter. Like if they were playing for like 40,000 first place or like 5,000, or even sometimes in the early days, like I say, very little, you know, the best players usually did go all out, and it was like bragging rights, or testing themselves, to try and be the best. So even if you say you're obviously correct here that like the lifespan of the Day of Defeat as a potentially big esports game, it wasn't that big, and unfortunately there were a lot of factors to that. Like, just to explain to the audience, like, first of all, like I say, unfortunately, because Counter-Strike existed, well, already people are going to have teams in that game, so it's hard to have like a second game, Secondly, also, just as an unfortunate detail, we're actually lucky in Counter-Strike that we made it 5v5, because Counter-Strike used to be like 6v6 or 7v7 earlier. Right. And that obviously hurts in the esports area because you've got to send in extra guys. So there's all these factors. And I think another one that people wouldn't realize now, because it's only a relevant factor now and it wasn't back then, is that, okay, back then Valve didn't support Counter-Strike. They didn't put money in the game because they didn't follow esports like that. But now, obviously, every esports game, the developer is involved. So even if it's a game that I don't care about, like, for example, Heroes of the Storm by Blizzard, it's not a game I follow or anything. But fair play, Blizzard puts money in for the pros who want to play that game, and they sponsor it, etc. So the problem for Day of Defeat was it just kind of got lost in the mix. Like, as you said, there was a lot of other World War II games, and then even though not strictly World War II, I remember even at one point in time it was being competed with the PC version of Call of Duty. You remember the first versions of that were more arcadey, they weren't a console type game they were now. So even though obviously I'm sure you got enjoyment out of competing still, was it tough to know that like you were one of the best in a game that, I mean, ultimately it never was going to have like the 10-year big career peak, right?
Right, and it was in the sense, dude, I had so many people pull me aside and be like, man, I wish you played Counter-Strike. Like, you just got something, and I would love for you to just have picked this game when you were 12 instead of Day of Defeat. Because I really felt like it was too late. I always struggled with grenades. I don't know why. I always hated the concept of like, oh, maybe it's gonna... I always just like to run at people and shoot them. And I think that's why I struggled. So I was really good with like the op in Counter-Strike. Like, I was super good in 1.5, 1.6, but I realized from once I got really good at DoD that like I had made my bed and I had to lie in it, and it was especially towards the end. I will say there was no streaming. I feel like streaming really changed like the idea of playing video games for money. It's like they can go make so much money on their personality and being good at the game, like that convergence. And so it's like if that had been a thing back then, I would have been, if I wasn't able to leverage that into a career, I would have been very, very sad. But it didn't seem like a career back then, man. Even for Counter-Strike people, it seemed so temporary. Like your window was so small, you age out very quickly in esports. So I don't think it ever really dawned on me. Honestly, it didn't dawn on me until League of Legends got really popular. And that's when I was like, oh my God, these people are making millions of dollars. They're traveling the world. This is it. Not only is it a job, it's a good job. You know what I mean? Like this is, and I think you can get into the whole, they're super overworked in my opinion, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, it wasn't quite the sadness that I didn't, pick up another game that it seems like in hindsight, because I didn't realize I thought Counter-Strike would go, you know what I mean? Eventually.
Sure.
And I mean, and I think you saw, Valve really step up and try to leverage into something that could be a little more long term. But that wasn't a thing back then. It was like, oh, a new game's going to come out, or I knew StarCraft was really popular, but I didn't really play RTS games. So if I had known a little even more about that scene and just how people were really professional and that was their job, was to play StarCraft, even at that time, I just didn't really know about it, so I didn't have an opinion on it. And so yeah, in hindsight, I feel like I struck a little too early, you know what I mean? But I will say, just as a human being, it is such a time sink. Like, I seriously, when I went to college is what happened, and I was like, I cannot do this anymore. Like, and I am super jealous of what you do, just as an aside. I'm not like hating on you, but it's just like I spent so much time literally just playing video games, and I was like, I don't want someone to put on my tombstone like was really good at DoD. You know what I mean? Like, I want to go out and like experience life, and so it was like a crisis for me of like, I am spending 70, 80 hours a week on my computer, and I'm missing relationships with people I love because I'm just always on my computer. And so if it had been more like a job, I could have justified it, right? Because it's like, this is work, you know what I mean? But it wasn't like that. It was literally just like, I'm chilling in my dorm room playing Counter-Strike with like 150 ping. So it's just, once I got to college and I realized that my my dorm internet was terrible. It was just a really good opportunity for me to kind of branch out and just like go kind of live my life, because that had just been my whole identity up to that point, was I just played games all the time. And like I still enjoy gaming. I still play League of Legends and Counter-Strike Go, and I got matched against Heiko probably like 10 months ago, which was super cool. So I'm still really good at Counter-Strike, but it's literally like a washed up person playing it. That's literally what it's like. It'd be like if you watch freaking some old NFL pro go throw the football. It's like they can still do it, but like there's just something about it. And the best way I can explain it is for every hour I play, I'll get like 10 minutes of like that feeling of like, oh my God, I am just I'm aware of everything that's going on and I can kill everyone. And then the other 50 minutes of the time, I'm just like, God, I'm slow and I'm just watching a corner and a dude just peeks and kills me. And I'm like, it wasn't like this when I was younger. So it's very, very frustrating to play games in that capacity now. I have to just like step back from it. I play a little bit of games every other day, and that's just all I can muster, because I have so much stuff going on in my life, and I spent so much of my life just glued to my computer. So I've tried to kind of break that habit of just living online, like living my validation from my rank in a game. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of people that are gamers struggle with that balance. So it definitely, like, as thankful as I am, or as sad as I am that I didn't get to roll it into like a real career, the amount of time I would have had to play and wait around for it to become a real career was like 7 or 8 years. And it's like, I'm glad I didn't stick around that long and wait for Twitch to come out and all that stuff. If I had been closer to the onset of it, absolutely, I would be so upset if I hadn't have been able to parlay it into an actual career. But the way the cards fell is just a really cool story I can tell people, that I meet that play games. So that's kind of what I chalk it up to.
So as you mentioned, like in Cal, you were in all the finals, etc. And obviously in general, like the consistency of a very good through line through your career, but it's not like you won every tournament. It's not like even Check 6 won every tournament. So aside from complexity, who were the other legitimately really good teams? Who were like the other teams that were tough, and who were the really good players that people should know?
Yeah, absolutely. I was hoping you'd ask something similar to that, because all my online buddies are going to watch this, because I still talk to all of them in some capacity. But some standouts to me. There was a guy that played named Ward that was like my nemesis, and there was a lot of these people that were really, really, really good at the game, but they never got on the team. They could never break through kind of that red tape, or they couldn't go to the LAN. So it's like no one really wanted to mess with people that couldn't go and play on LAN, because you didn't really know if they cheated or not. Honestly, like I still don't know if that guy cheated. Sure, I don't think he did, but it's just like he was really good. So Akputh was so good. He was probably the closest to like his videos. You can tell he has a very unique play style. He doesn't like do a lot of flick at all. He's just like knows where to look, and he never has to move his mouse very far to get a kill. And I always thought that style was a lot different than mine. Like I'll over peek and correct, and it just kind of like freestyle. Like I was like the Mango. If you follow Super Smash Brothers at all, yeah, I was just wild man out there. Like I just wanted to just assert myself at all times, no matter how little health I had. And Akputh wasn't the opposite. He wasn't campy, but he was really, really just smart. He was just a very brain kind of player. And then Blairg, who was on my team, was really, really good. Some people from some of the other teams. So Dorito was on a different team than me for a long time, and he was always the guy that like I could not best. Like my style and his style just butted heads so bad that it was just he was always in a better spot than me, and sometimes I could kill him, but he was so good that like all things being equal, the guy with the better spot's going to win. So I experienced a lot of that when I played him. It was very, very frustrating to play him. I mentioned Shifty Powers earlier. He was one of the guys that they had a team that he was on called Unknown Killers UKZ, and they were literally all friends in real life, and they would not leave each other. And like he could have gone to any top 3 team and won some stuff, and he just wanted to play with his friends, which I always really respected. But he was probably the best heavy that ever played the game. He played BAR. That's what I remember him as. He was one of those guys that could just take over a game. And I think you'll see that in Counter-Strike, where it's like, if this guy's on, you cannot win. Like you have to just hope he's off. And so if he was on, it was so hard to I just remember there was the whole all things equal mentality of a heavy that is it can't shoot very far. So if you're far away, you have an advantage. And like he just negated that. Like he would shoot it like a rifle. He would one tap it at you, and he would just. I mean, he was like the guy you just had nightmares about. And I remember on LAN. Their team was really good on LAN. I think you saw a lot of people kind of rise to the top or kind of fall down on LAN because it's a totally different. The person's right over there, and it's totally more personal. And then there was for some reason I'm struggling to remember their name, but they were probably our biggest rivals. We played them in the third World Final that we won. It was. Pandemic, maybe? No, I don't think so. I can't remember their name.
There was a Pandemic team, I remember.
Yeah, there was Pandemic. That was Booten, and he was a really, really good rifle in the game. He was kind of the same way. He always played with his friends, and I think that was to his detriment if he wanted to win. But I mean, a lot of people, that's just what they did. They played games with their buddies. There wasn't that much money on the line to, entice people to just abandon their friends.
Who was on the team you're thinking of then? I'll see if I can find it.
Yeah. It was Tragic. I remember he destroyed us in the final. The A's a 4, GIK, I think it was. It was Cable Guy. Who else was on that team? They were really, really good. They were like our main, and there was some extreme controversy when we played them. Basically, one of our guys lagged out of the game, and they were winning by a large margin. And I remember I felt really bad, but it was like, at the end of the day, the rules are there for a reason, and the rules state if you disconnect before a certain time, you have to rematch the game. And so it's not like we broke his computer so we could replay him. Like his computer legitimately shut down while we were playing, and we played 5v6 and they capped out on us. And so once his computer got back up, we restarted the game and we barely beat him, and that was like a huge deal within the community. I think that was only their first loss though in the tournament, so I think they still went on, but I can't 100% remember. I know we were in the losers bracket in the last year we went to the finals. So they were probably going in undefeated. But yeah, I can't remember if Tragic was on that team or if he had left and gone to a new team.
By looking at like a frag movie, I think like the teams he was on was like a Xeno, and then R Sports when it was like Revolution Sports or something.
That's who it was. Yeah, it was Revolution. Yeah. They were good. They were Cable Guy. I can't remember who their sniper was. He had one name and then he changed to his actual last name, and that's what he played. I think it was Fent or something, but he was really, really good. Those guys in general were a team I really struggled with. And then it was interesting because everyone kind of struggled against a different style, and I struggled with people that were really good but played safe. I could usually match people that played really aggressive that were really good, and I could always match people that played really slow. That was like my rock paper scissors that I would win. Is like once all the money came out, the game just transformed. Everyone wanted to play super slow. They wanted to hide in corners. They wanted to camp flags. Like that was like what you did. And I was one of the few players that was just like, I'm not going to do that. It's not fun. I'm not going to just sit and wait. I'm going to run at you. And so my frag videos always ended up crazy because I was just always running just directly at people. There was a gun that could hit you for 90 damage. So once you got hit with it, you only had 10 health. So there was like, once you got shot with it, you had to kind of slow it down. And like, I would just, I'm just going to run at you and I'm just going to keep carring and just try to just, pick your corner. And it became this really like mythical way that I played. And then I did not succumb to like the camping mentality that became, and Tragic was the same way. He played a heavy and he would just run at you and he was so good. And so it was really interesting to see how the money affected the way people play and how it just changed kind of the meta of the game. You know what I mean? It became a lot more, there was a lot less capping out. It became more like capturing and holding flags. And that was slightly less fun, but honestly, the game was so good, you could still work around it given the tools that you had. Like when you had the KAR, you could always kill a camper like almost 100% of the time, because the peeker's advantage was still a thing, and the peeker's advantage plus the KAR was just, if you were perfect, you got perfect results. Like, and I think that's missing from, I think the highest level pro games still have it, but I think it's kind of lacking in a lot of the like mid-range competitive FPS games. They just want everyone to be able to do real good, and I just hate that mentality. I'm like, no, you want the best players to be able to kind of assert themselves in the game, and when they can't, I think the whole game struggles because of it.
So since you referenced the frag movies there, that's obviously like a notable thing, which at the time you couldn't have known it. But I mean, like I said, that's one of the ways I got to know who you were as a player, and Akvath, etc. A bunch of the other guys is from seeing these movies, and you know, if it was exciting and if it was decently done as a movie, then you could tell there was something to this player. So I always think back then in the early days, like I know in Counter-Strike, there used to be a bunch of amazing pros who just didn't care about demos and didn't care about recording them, and thought frag movies were just, you know, a flash in the pan and who cares about them. Did you actually know at the time, like, that there was something to having frag movies? Did you just do it because it was cool? What was the logic behind why you had a bunch?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it was a little bit of both. You know what I mean? One, it was just like what you did. Like, especially if you were a really good player, like by the end of it, other people would make your movies. You didn't have to do anything. You just send them all your demos, and if you were nice, you time stamped them, and that was it. But at the beginning, like Akputh made all of his own movies, and he was a really, really talented artist. Like, I'm pretty sure he's actually an artist professionally today. Like, he was a really, really good artist. So it was cool to see him kind of the way he put him together. He always had a really simple kind of style. But yeah, it was a really good way to let the Europeans. So the scene was really split. The Europeans and the North Americans didn't get to play each other. There was no Battle of the Atlantic or anything like that. Like, we literally just didn't get to play them. One time, a couple of the best players came over for the World Tournament, but it was like 3 of the best Europeans and 3 super mediocre Americans. So it was just they had no synergy. It was really hard to get a feel for kind of how they played or if they were that good. The rules were a lot different. Europeans had an extra player. It was 7v7, and don't quote me on that. I'm pretty sure it was. And there was no spawn camping. That was super weird. There was like off limits areas on the map that you couldn't go in. And that just freaked my brain out. I'm like, dude, if I have killed all of you and made it to this spot, you better believe I'm going to be able to kill you standing inside this building. Like, if the game doesn't kill me for it, you know what I mean? So that always kind of weirded my brain out. They always thought we were just lunatics for just spawn camping like we did. But yeah, it was definitely like, it was a good way to kind of remember and like have it set into stone of like, hey, this is that time because there was a lot, especially at CPL, there was a lot of like cool storylines. Like, there was one time where we were playing on Donner and my whole team had died, and it was just me, and I was at the mid flag, and there was 4 of them left and 1 of me, and when you lose the mid flag on Donner, it's like suicide. It's so hard to get back. That's the way that whole map was designed, and I just immediately killed all 4 of them, like immediately. And I remember my team, it was like 4 bullets in a row, and I remember my team was like, oh my god. And I remember that that's always one of my favorite parts in the video, because if you don't have the context, if you just watch it, you're like, oh cool, he killed 4 people. But when you have the context of like where it was at on the map and what it means for the actual in score of the game, it was like a huge deal. So anyone with knowledge of the game can watch that and be like, oh my god, he saved the mid flag on Donner. So, and you could literally sense the team like being like, we're gonna overwhelm Kellen, we're gonna all come from different sides. Yes. And I'm just like, nope. And it was like that. It was really like a good way to kind of memorialize cool plays or famous things that happened that people talked about online. Like, oh, do you guys remember that time? And so it was a little bit of both. But it was really nice to have to watch the European frag videos and kind of see what they were capable of. And there was a lot of controversy, I'll say, on the North American side, because I think overall we had a healthier scene. I think they had really good players, but it was all kind of top heavy. So you saw a whole lot of the best players just destroying everyone else. So it's like, it was kind of hard to get a sense. Over here, most of my clips came from playing the other best teams in the world. You know what I mean? Like, I'm playing the second place team and just destroying them. So it's a lot different than playing like a mid-tier, like 20th team in the world and just destroying them. It's just not the same. So I think you saw a little bit of that, and that was to no fault of them. Like, Animal was always who I thought was the best European player, and his frag videos are, if you're going to watch anyone's, watch his. They're just stupid. It's just stupid how much he just was good with the car.
Okay. So one of the interesting things about Day of Defeat overall was, as I said, since it's a game that quite early on obviously it had objectives anyway, so in a sense it had like a structure to it that was different from something like Counter-Strike. You don't just keep respawning at the initial point and then go forwards every time. But then also, as you're mentioning, people had eventually, they understood the composition of which weapons you need to have on a team and how people have to play. So, like, as you said, in theory, some people still play the game now. I mean, there's always some people who just love a certain game, they'll never move on. Right. How did the game actually evolve, like, strategically and tactically over the years? I mean, as you said, an artificial way it changed was when there was lands and money on the line, people just camped, etc. Like, that's understandable, but how did the game actually, like, evolve over the years?
Sure. So it really 1.3b, the early days when I was 12 or 13, dude, I just ran around on that map that was like Overlord, where it was like Axis versus Allies. I'm coming up on the beach and they just mow me down. That was like the first game where you could do that in a multiplayer setting. So that I have no concept of, but that was the competitive scene was pretty much nothing back then. The next game, 3.1, it was really jump shooting was a big thing. The game changed a lot between 3.1 and what people call retail when it actually came out to purchase. In 3.1, DoD had what still to this day is the best MG competitive system in a game, where one of your classes was literally a machine gunner, and he had a huge machine gun and he could deploy it wherever he wanted and just lock down a part of the map. And it was so cool, because inherently that seems like it wouldn't work. It seems like it'd be either overpowered or underpowered, which is what ended up happening in retail, is that it was way underpowered, so no one played it anymore. Okay. But there was a time where it was really, really good, and that's when the game was a lot more about like controlling areas of the map. Like you would systematically take it with a sniper and rifles, and then once you had it, you would hold it with the machine gunner or a sniper. Generally, one on each side of the map. The machine gunner goes this way, the sniper goes this way, and I think you saw a lot of that. I was good. I was playing like Cal M, like mid level through that, and it was. The game, it was a lot less flashy. Like there wasn't just that, like you didn't see people get like 5 kills in a row. It just wasn't a thing. No one was that good. You know what I mean? No one was that mechanically good at the game yet. And so you saw a lot of really good MGs. You saw a lot of the KAR was still really good, but it wasn't quite its final form, where it just became just like a railgun from Quake, just like one hitting everybody. And once it went retail, I think there was 2 kind of schools. The first one, that's when people started to really clean it up, and it became like you saw a lot of role players. Like generally your guy that played the submachine gun was not trying to run around and get a bunch of kills. Like he was trying to hold objectives. And so you saw that really evolve to where generally your in-game leader was your submachine gun, and he tried to hold stuff and tell everybody what to do. And then you might also have like a heavy doing that. Sometimes a sniper, usually just a heavy. And by heavy, I mean like not like a mountable gun, just like a heavy infantry, like automatic weapon. And then generally the rifles were like your guys that went and got stuff. Like it seems kind of counterintuitive, because like you'd think in a close range skirmish like an assault rifle would be better, and by and large it was, unless you were at the top tier, and then it was the KAR or the Grand. I mean, it became really, it's kind of like the AWP at close range in 1.6. Like it wasn't, you still weren't at a disadvantage. You could still just quick scope.
Do the equivalent of the no scope, yeah.
Exactly. Like you would just see people just, it wasn't like, oh, I'm close to him, he has an AWP, I'm going to kill him now. It's like, no, if he's good, he's still going to kill you. So I think you saw a lot of that with the way the rifles worked in the game. But yeah, and then when the money got involved, that was like the most drastic shift. And I think honestly, in a long enough timeline, that would have been a natural progression anyways. Of you never saw until the money, and you always saw it after, is people would cap hard to cap flags and literally just sit by them. They wouldn't help their team. They would just hide, and then when you went to go cap that back, then they would just walk up behind you and kill you both. And then the game even changed after that, right? People became really adept at like watching those players and knowing if they had died. Like, so it became like, hey, I haven't seen someone die in like 4 or 5 minutes. Where is this guy? Another thing you saw is ninja capping, where they would get through your whole line and then hide at your first flag, and then as the other flags get taken, then they would take your first. So it wasn't a fight for it. They're already there waiting for their team to cap the rest, and they're going to sneak in and steal it. And that wasn't really a thing either until you saw the money get kind of injected into it. But again, I think the natural progression, if it just continued infinitely, got more and more competitive regardless of the money, you still were going to see that kind of like, hey, I'm not as skilled as them, how else can I win? You started to see that kind of really evolve, and more than anything, the other biggest change is snipers really changed through the course of the game. Like at the beginning, it was just kind of like the class you played. There was a lot more op style, like Rambo sniping is what people called it, where the sniper was really accurate, not scoped in, and you could just run around and kind of use it like a rifle and then scope it every now and then if you wanted to. And then once the game had been around and retail had been established and there was a pantheon of best teams, it was a role player. Like your job was to kill their sniper. It just became this counter sniping duel. Whereas when I played sniper, it was more just like try to kill anybody. By the end, it was literally like your only job is to kill their sniper and then not let him retake his spot.
So one of the interesting things about esports, something we've touched on a bunch here, because obviously Day of Defeat fall victim to it, right, is that it's not that every great game gets an equal amount of esports attention and chance to be an esport. I mean, in that sense, I guess you could compare it to like movies, the one that makes the most money might not always be the best one. And meanwhile, we all know there's like some amazing
great
movies
analogy
that never got any box office at all. And, we only know they were great if you were an aficionado of the movie. So an example in esports as well that I would give is sometimes it wasn't even a logic to it. Like, for example, I actually quite enjoyed, because I came from Quake before Counter-Strike, I quite enjoyed when they made, if you remember, they had the mod for Return to Castle Wolfenstein, Enemy Territory.
Yeah,
actually,
absolutely.
Again, it was a World War II game, but because it was in the Quake engine, there was less RNG, and famously, they made that version actually free. So I remember thinking, right, well, if it's free and it's, it's pretty well coded, this is going to be huge. And it did, basically, that went even less viral around the world than all these other games we're talking about. So in many senses, like, the big problem, I think, for some of the early esports games is someone might have made a great game and they might have had some great concepts, but if for some reason it just doesn't hook people or doesn't translate or doesn't hit its window, it just can disappear, as we've seen with some games. So my question is, beyond that point, assuming you're not one of the people who's just a diehard still playing Day of Defeat now, are there any like dynamics in Day of Defeat that you do see in other games? Are there any that are missing? Like, are there any games that give you something equating to what you enjoyed about Day of Defeat?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I definitely know there's no World War II games that do.
Yeah, it seems like it.
I mean, it got super consoleized when Call of Duty kind of went that direction, because Call of Duty 2 was a really good competitive computer game. I know people probably maybe didn't follow that scene, but
well, I mean, one thing people won't realize, because I actually knew some people who were from Counter-Strike who played the first Call of Duties, and the thing was, at the time there was the split. There was people who played it and bought the console game, but at the time actually people were trying to make the esport the PC version, and so they used to tell me it's not that far from Counter-Strike, it's still pretty arcadey, you can do a lot in it, but they told me like every version that came out, it went more towards the console side, and eventually they took out a lot of essentially what you'd call like the really, really high skill things, or which basically the problem is those are the things that annoy the most casual player. So Call of Duty is obviously the ultimate casual game, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, right? There's this drive by the public community or the casual community to strip away all the things that are annoying to them, because it'd be like if they changed the rules in sports because like people playing Little League didn't like them. It would just be insane. You know what I mean? It's like, we're going to move the fence because this guy can't hit home runs. It's like, no, how about he works out and learns how to hit home runs? Like, it's just, the whole concept is silly to kind of move the goalpost. And I think it makes sense because it's a money thing. They want more casual people to play it. I mean, I get it. So I'm not saying that I don't, but yeah, it's, and I do remember was it Wolfenstein? What was the mod?
Yes.
Unreal
it's Enemy Territory.
Enemy Territory.
Like add-on for Wolfenstein,
I didn't play it, but I knew, dude, that game is like a cult game. To use your movie reference, people loved that game that played.
For sure.
I remember it being like, people thought a lot about it like you did. Of this is going to be the next big thing, and I bet people are still playing that game. That's one of the things about these old games is they have devout followings, and people are still running emulators or whatever they have to do to play them. But yeah, so as far as DoD translating into other games, I feel like I'm probably not the best person to answer it because I don't game that much anymore. I especially don't. I play like 2 games. You know what I mean? I've always kind of been like that. I'd much rather get good at one game than play 20. But what I think is a good kind of analogy to what made DoD so good, and that it had this gun that could one-hit kill people, is that it's like having a good headshot system. I always think that, like, I wax about competitive esports all the times with my friends at game, and it's like, if you have a good headshot system, right? If you give a good player and say, hey, if you can shoot this smaller part, we're going to reward you more. That's never going to be a bad thing. You know what I mean? Like, that's never going to make the game less competitive. And so it just baffles me. I've always been a big believer in pro mods. I know they never took off. Like, I know that's not a thing, and it's not going to be a thing, and I've fully made peace with that. But, like, it is so obvious to me that the casual guy shouldn't be playing the same game as the professional. Again, the sports analogy, it's a different size field. There's different rules. You can't steal bases when you're little in baseball. Like, it shouldn't be the same game. And I think where you see it the most is, and this was a huge problem with Day of Defeat Source, in my opinion, especially when you're talking about World War II games, is there's no I'm trying to think of a good word for it. There's no, like, simplicity to the geography, right? Because everything's blown up, houses are destroyed, tanks have weird hitboxes on them, and I think you see it a little bit in Go too, right? Because 1.6 was so good because it was just, everything was a straight line. It's like you peeked over something and that's all you could see, and there was another box.
Visibility was very good, right?
It was like, again, it was like a game where there was just these things that were consistent, and it's like, once you introduce all these weird shaped models that serve no function other than to be like, hey, I'm a casual guy, and look at that truck, it looks real. You know what I mean? Like, that's the only thing that's getting satisfied by your realistic truck that is just a nightmare to shoot around. Is that in my dream esports world, literally, you remember CPL Mill? I'm sure you do.
Yes.
How it was just white and boxes, and that was it. That was all the geography in the whole map. Is that every map, it should be, I can see, there's no visibility, like, just make it like a paintball speedball map, and it doesn't matter how pretty it is. And it's like, I get that that's not going to be a thing, but it's just, it's so disappointing to me that, like, pro gaming has got to where it is, and there's not someone at some big company like, hey, we don't need all this weird pretty stuff. It doesn't make, it gives these it'd be like having a weird just thing on a football field just because people are like, oh, look at that beautiful statue in the middle of the field, just destroying this perfect lines of the game. I don't understand why that voice of I don't understand why companies don't realize that esports are this huge. Riot got it. They're out there just making millions and billions because they understood that, like, if we make this infrastructure, people will come watch it from all over the world. And it's like, you see it the most in Melee. Do you follow Melee at all?
I don't follow fighting games. I know a tiny bit.
Okay, then I won't go into a long. I love Melee, and it was so simple to get into. It's just like, hey, I understand what's happening. I've never, like, I remember I watched it for like a day, and I was like, this is one of my favorite games to watch. Like, I understood it in an hour. And it's one of those games that's very easy to watch, but you can also tell it's really hard. So it's like, that to me is the perfect, like, viewer experience. And then you have Nintendo. They want no part of Melee as a competitive game. They want no part of it. It's like, is there not someone at Nintendo that's like, there's this huge player base that wants to play our game competitively, and we apparently hate money. And it's like, I get that they're set in their ways, but it's like, if you make Melee free to play and make skins and make a competitive league and go full on League of Legends route with Melee, you are literally going to make so much money. And instead, you have all these pros fighting for like $5,000. They're fighting for what I was fighting for 10, 12 years ago in Melee, because there's just no support whatsoever from Nintendo. And I just, it's depressing to me that, in one hand, pro gaming has come so far, so far, and on the other, I feel like you still have just this mentality of letting the casual player kind of drive the experience. And I think StarCraft's really been good. I know StarCraft 2 has been a little maligned in the competitive community, but they did not take it all the way down. That game is hard. There's people that won't play StarCraft because it's too hard, and like, that's how. You know what I mean? Like, they didn't dumb it all the way down just so more people would play it. And so I just think that there's this innate desire to make better and prettier games, and people love watching the new pretty games, and it's totally at the expense of, like, good competitive gameplay. How do you feel about that? I figured you would have an opinion on it. Like, do you agree? Do you think the way it's going is acceptable? Which do you think is better? Do you have any stock in pro mods in general?
I mean, yeah, my big problem with it in general, especially because I played a lot of the early games, is, yeah, I don't like the idea that you dumb it down a lot. Because I feel like people... Because esports isn't something where it's not like science, we haven't literally figured out all the mechanisms of how it all works. So unfortunately, yes, there is clearly a trend, just like with the movie analogy I gave before. Yeah, if you make movies that in general are for like the average person, you got a pretty good chance they could be a huge movie, okay? But there are still movies that are incredible. Like, think about like The Dark Knight or something. That is not a movie where they tried to make it for the stupidest person in the world, but it was incredibly successful. So to me, it's like there is a middle ground you could find between the two. So that's what I want people to do. Whereas at the moment, while because even though it's gotten big, it's still not as big, obviously, as it could be one day. So I feel like people are too addicted at the moment to the idea of like, well, we just have to do whatever it takes to get more people through the door. Whereas I think like, yeah, to a degree, but you got to kind of like have a balance. But it's got to still be a very, very good game for the pro, in my opinion. You got to, if you don't take care of those guys, then at the end, yeah, you'll have like the NFL of gaming, but it won't have all the amazing players, and you won't be able to do all the amazing shit.
Exactly, and then it inherently isn't. Because no one's going to come out to watch a game where they can't see someone do something incredible. And I think 1.6 was like the purest form of that, where it was just like you could watch that game and just be like, oh my God, like these guys are so good. Like the best way I can explain it is you're never in an unwinnable situation. You can always skill yourself out of the predicament you've been put in, and that is so fun to watch. It's so fun to watch someone be 1v5, and I will say this because we live in a day and age where there's so many people playing. The whole idea, like frag videos back when I was playing, are not what they are today, because the sheer number of people playing, you're gonna have the guy that shoots 3 bullets through a wall and gets 3 headshots. It's like, because there's so many, like the randomness is dialed up to 9 because you have Reddit and you have people sharing these clips. Yes. Just innumerable amounts of people, and you have like fan-made frag videos where every frag is a different person. So you take all these people's once-in-a-lifetime shots and shove them in one movie, right? And so I think that wasn't a thing back then. Like the degree to which the frag movies have just usurped all of what they used to be is you can't even put it into words. So I'm not saying that the new games don't have that, because they definitely do. But I feel like it was a little more pure in those the original StarCraft 1.6. And I think your answer's spot on, right? There's a happy medium, and I hate seeing companies not realize the value. They just see the value in Call of Duty's the worst offender. You know what I mean? Yeah. They just, people still play it pro, but like they only want to make a game that is going to be bought by the maximum amount of people. That's all they care about. And I feel like what they're missing is that there's a different kind of money to be made in what Riot's doing. You know what I mean? In what Valve is doing. Like they're finding that middle ground better than Call of Duty. And I just wish more games did. You know what I mean? Like I wish more games tried to leverage, 1, made a good game, and then 2, actually tried to leverage into. I think there's some smaller games like Smite. I've never followed Smite, but I know they've tried really hard to like make that a professional, like competitive game. And it's like, I think that is always going to make your game better. I don't think it's ever going to make it worse. So I don't see why it's ever a bad idea.
Okay, right. So at the end of the interview then, do you have a final message for people, or do you have someone you want to thank or shout out?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll say hi to my fiance. She's going to watch this and not know anything about what's going on. And I have a lot of really close friends that I still play games with. Ryan, Charles, Jordan, and Michael. Hello. But yeah, it's been a wild ride, I will say. It's been very, very rewarding, and more than anything, like if you're doing it, like just know that like I hit this point in my life where I didn't have fun playing video games because I felt like I was always practicing. There's a difference between playing a game and practicing a game, right? And I spent so much time when I was younger practicing, and now I don't anymore. I never load up empty servers. I never watch strategy guides. I just play games now. It's what I enjoy. I do it probably a little bit more than I should, but like there is another side to it. So it's just like, as much as it can consume you, like it's every now and then you got to take a step back and realize it's still just fun. You know what I mean? Because I lost sight of that for a long time. It becomes a grind, and I don't know how the pros do it, because it's got to feel like a job when you take it that far. But more than anything, yeah, it's like, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity, and definitely just take a step back and enjoy it, because eventually you'll find yourself almost 30 with a professional job and, you know, remembering what it was like.
Hi, this is Natu, a guy who's way too old and way too long involved in this game, and you're watching Thorin's YouTube channel.
What up, guys? This is Jordan Nelson Gilbert.
We work with the world's top pros to teach you how to take your game to the next level with constantly updated training content. When you're done watching and want to train or warm up, just a few clicks will put you in your preferred training mods like Deathmatch. Why warm up for a match on Mirage by getting shot in the back on Dust 2? That's why we built Duels, real fights and real maps. 1 minute in Duels is like 20 rounds of real CS. Exclusively available on Boomio.com.